Hey, welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Coach Tripp, along with my buddy, Coach Mark Hobley.
Peace.
Coach Hobbs, I call him. To the left of us is Bradley Bowes, classmate of Fred Robbins, our guest today. Super Bowl champ, 12-year NFL vet, 3 teams, second-round pick. Were you second-round pick, Fred?
Yeah.
Holy macaroni, spaghetti, and pasta bazool. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy. I appreciate that.
And no problem, man. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to jump on and talk with you, man.
Man, we're going to start from the beginning because a lot of people, you've been on the radio show before when I was in radio, but yeah, I just wanted to get everybody updated on you. Tell everybody about growing up here in Pensacola and your mom and dad and your siblings.
Yeah, grew up in Pensacola here, born and raised. My parents, Fred and Blanche, Fred singing Blanche. My sister, Frida, she was 5 years older than me. Grew up, just playing, Little League baseball. They was always big supporters of my dreams in the sports world. And after that, went to Tate, graduated in 95, played baseball and football there. Then went on to college at Wake Forest, spent 5 years Wake Forest playing under Jim Caldwell, one of my great coach, great friend of mine, real mentor of mine, and I got drafted, second round with the Minnesota Vikings in 2000. Had 4 great years there, then went on 6 years with the Giants. Came an All-Pro, won a Super Bowl, some of my best years there, and then I finished my last 2 years with the Rams. Old defense coordinator Spagnuolo, after we won a Super Bowl, he got the head job with the Rams, so brought me over there with him, and I finished up my last 2 years there. And since 2012, man, I just, came back home, retired, doing my nonprofit, working with kids and also training guys now that's, getting ready for the Senior Bowl, NFL Combine, and NFL Draft. So that's kind of like what I do now in my spare time.
Wow, that was a quick wrap up. We're going to rewind. We're going to rewind a little bit, man.
Yeah.
You did play baseball. Wade McKinney was actually one of your teammates up there at Tate, the head football coach at PHS. Yeah, well, was it close between high school and football? And talk about your high school years at Tate.
Well, I had some great years of high school, man. I didn't play youth football at all. I always played, youth baseball. So baseball was my favorite sport growing up. I didn't play football until I got to 9th grade, but I felt comfortable at Tate because a lot of the guys that I played youth baseball with, right there at Tate with me. So it was the easiest transition for me, coming, from Lincoln Park. Well, I originally supposed to go to Pine Forest, but when I was in 8th grade at Wedgwood, they changed the school district. And so they shipped Lincoln Park, half of Lincoln Park, like to Tate. So that transition a lot easier because I knew a lot of people out there already. And then, I tried my crack at football. I played my last grade year. I didn't like it. I didn't play it all. I didn't play it all, my 10th grade year. And then I went back out again my junior year. So really, I would say I had like only really 2 good years of high school football, and then my 11th grade year I played offensive line, and nobody wants to play offensive line, So. But my senior year we had a new coach, Sam McCorkle come in, and then he switched me to, I was pretty athletic, so he switched me to play tight end and our defensive end, and so I think that's when I kind of really hit my stride, like my last year, in high school.
Talk about getting recruited from Wake Forest. How did you pick Wake Forest? Did your dad want you to go there? You must have had pretty good grades because at Wake Forest, they go to class there. Not like
yeah, Wake came on it, towards the end. You know what I mean? Like I was recruited. I wasn't highly recruited. Like I said, I really didn't fall in love with football until really like my senior year. Back then I was just playing. When you're one of the biggest guys in the school, you just expected to play, football. But I really hit my stride like toward mid-season. And I was getting recruited, by Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, went to visit, Tennessee, and things like that. But Wake Forest is like the last visit I had. And when I went up there, I liked like the small niche community it was. And Jim Caldwell was a great coach, man. He really sold the education part. I think back then when I was coming out getting recruited, it was more like, going to college, really selling the education and graduating with a degree. Unlike now, you see more, it's all about sports, all about sports, all about sports. But Coach Caldwell, who's been around a long time, knew that, only a small percentage. Hey, if you're blessed to make it, you can make it. But I can promise you, you leave here with a degree and be a better man. And so that's kind of like was a selling point for me and selling point for my family.
All right, let's talk about a little bit about the Demon Deacon years.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about a favorite teammate or maybe a coach that pushed you along at Wake Forest, and talk about some special moments at that school.
Well, I think for me, I was recruited by Terrell Lawson. He's a great coach. He's a D coordinator now, I think, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he recruited me.
Wow.
Coming out of Tate. And I remember in my freshman year, I was redshirted. You know what I mean? I'm like, I know I'm better than some of the guys that's playing now. You know what I mean? It was the first
Yeah.
time like I really ever, had to sit the bench for anything. Like, you just go out to work, play. You
Right.
lift, you do all this work, but you don't get the benefit to play. You know what I mean? And I was
Right.
kind of that really hurt me because I knew I was better than some of the guys out there that playing. But he was like, listen, just use this time really, to get better, get bigger, get stronger. Learn the game a little bit more. You're not gonna be able to just beat people with just raw size and power like you did like you was in high school. You're gonna play against guys who are a lot bigger and stronger than you are. So you really got to learn the game mental. So I think hearing it from him, somebody who had been through it and coached guys, that kind of enabled me, man, to really hone in my red shirt year to kind of do a lot of film study. I wasn't playing, but I watched film like no other. And so by the time, after my
Wow.
freshman year, I won the starting job, in the spring of the following year, my red shirt freshman year. So, I had 4 great years of really learning the game and being able to get better, but also being a student of the game.
Fred, I hear this from a lot of my old teammates and even guys I never played with, but they feel at Alabama the practices, from my experience, it was the same way. My college coach was much better than my NFL and CFL coaches.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like, and did you learn most of your X's and O's from your college coach or your pro coaches?
Yeah, I think so, man. I learned a lot from, I had a great staff, Coach Caldwell, who came from a great lineage of coaches, coached under Joe Paterno, was on the staff with, Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith. All those guys were on the same staff under Joe Paterno. So I had a great, foundation set, for somebody who understood the college and pro ranks and it's just learning the foundation of the game. But I think once I got to the NFL, it's kind of like, listen, you expected to know that already. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's almost
right,
like, math. If you're an algebra 2 teacher, listen, hey, I expect you to know how to do pre-algebra and algebra 1 already.
right,
You
right,
know what I mean? So there's
right,
no sense. I shouldn't have to go back over and do that again. So I
right.
think you really learn the foundation once you're in college, like how to play the game. And what gets you to the next level is, okay, how do you, take what you learned in college and be able to apply it to yourself to get better? Because once you get to the NFL, man, they expect you know that already.
Second round pick. I think your senior year, you guys came in second in the ACC. Talk about the turnaround. Talk about the notoriety. And the second round pick is really, really high. Talk about that process and that phone call.
Well, I think, man, starting back out, my red shirt freshman year, when I first started, we had a young team, and we had a bunch of young guys that learned to play early, in our second year there. And I'll never forget, like I think my third year, uh, they had us ranked kind of pretty high, and we beat like a good Northwestern team. Northwestern was ranked like number 5 or 6 in the country when they had Darnell Autry, Dwayne
Mhm.
Bates. They were ranked like number 6, and I think they won the conference year before, and we beat them at home, and I think that kind of elevated our program. We just wasn't consistent enough. We were athletic, but a lot of guys are kind of hitting their stride. But like towards my last year, we had a lot of fifth year seniors and a lot of fourth year guys playing. They had got learned to play early, and that year we just kind of we I think we went 7-5. But out of those 5 games we lost, man, they were close games. I mean, we were in
Yeah.
it to the last minute, against some of the top schools like Florida State, Clemson, but we just didn't have enough depth, But
Mm.
we finished out, that year going to the bowl game, the first bowl game we had in over 10 years, and we beat a good Arizona State team. They had Terrell Suggs and Heat, who was the tight end, played for the Ravens. So we beat a team, man. That had like some first round guys on for the bowl game.
Wow. What was it like getting drafted, and what was that phone call like? And did you celebrate? It's not
Man, I
like it is.
did. Yeah,
not like it is now. You're probably at home, right?
yeah. You know, the thing about it is I was uh my senior year, I played in the Senior Bowl, and the Carolina Panthers, George Seifert was the coach for the Carolina Panthers, and they coached me in the Senior Bowl, and I was like, and they're like, look, man, we love you. You know, if you're around, we're gonna draft you. I don't think they had a pick until the second round, and I was projected to go like late first, early second, depending on how the picks were. And the Carolina Panthers, they coached me in the Senior Bowl. When I got back, they came to my pro day. They worked me out. I went and visited them. You know what I mean? They was gave me a Carolina Panther hat, T-shirts, and I met with them. When I was at the NFL Combine, and I thought for certainly I was going to be a Carolina Panther. On draft day, I remember, Coach Seifert hit me up. I think they had like the 58th or 59th pick in the second round.
Hmm.
And I remember George Seifert was like, "Listen, hey, sit tight. We're gonna pick you up here in a little bit." And I was like, "All right." And then out of nowhere, man, with the 55th pick, the Vikings made a trade to Washington, and they sent Brad Johnson. Brad Johnson was a quarterback for the Vikings at the time. So they sent Brad Johnson to the Redskins, and the Redskins gave them the 55th and 56th pick. And Dennis Green called me out of nowhere. I had never met with the Vikings not one time. Usually you get an idea of what teams are going to draft you because you meet with them during the
Right.
NFL Combine. They come visit you during your pro days. But I never met with the Vikings not one time. And all of a sudden, Dennis Green called me. He's like, "Hey, sit tight. You ready to be a Minnesota Viking?" And I was like, "Yeah." So
Yeah.
he called, man, and I got to see my name get called and come across the screen and celebrated my family. And about 10, 15 minutes later, they called me back, and I already had my flight booked, for the next day to leave out. You know what I mean? So you had a little time to celebrate, but back then, man, once you get called, you were there the next day. You know what I mean?
Oh, talk a little bit about your coaches there, Denny Green. You got some great Randy Moss and Chris Carter on the same team. Gosh, talk
Right.
about that Viking squad.
Man, I was excited, man, because the year before the Vikings had lost. They were 15-1, and they lost in what was it? They lost an NFC Championship game against the Falcons in '99, and so
Yeah.
they were just one game away from the Super Bowl. And so I'm like, wow, man, I get to go. And one of the biggest things on the list, hey, man, I get to play with John Randall. You know what I mean? That's one of the guys I grew up with, watching.
Right.
Playing Tecmo Bowl with. You know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, now. And you had Chris Carter. You had Randy Moss. You had Dante Culpepper. You had Robert Smith. You had Ed McDaniel. You had
Hmm.
Jerry Ball. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was coming into a team that was already ready made, put together. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they put an emphasis on the defensive line because Chris Hovan, good friend of mine, he went first round out of Boston College. He was a D tackle, and I went second round as the D tackle at the 55th pick. And then the 56th pick, right behind me, the Vikings drafted Mike Burrow, who was the DN out of the University of Miami. So the first three picks of the Vikings draft, were defensive linemen. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
And so I didn't know it at the time, but that's when I got hip to like, okay, this is a business. They sending a message to the defensive line, the veteran group that's already there. That time I really went in and like with still with the college mindset, but it wasn't until like training camp where, you competing against guys who've been around, 9, 10, 11 years. That's your competition. And they kind of send it a message. So a lot of veteran guys didn't want to tell us nothing because they knew, because they've been in the NFL for a long time. Listen,
Hey,
hey, we can't tell these guys everything. We tell them
yeah,
everything,
the
you're gonna
jobs
be
are,
out of a
yeah,
job.
they're a competitor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I learned the business aspect of it that quick. And
Yeah.
John Randall, it was like, listen, hey, he said, I'm not afraid to teach them. He said, because I ain't afraid of none of y'all taking my job. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, being with that group, a veteran group, it
Yeah.
groomed me. It groomed me how to be a professional early in my career and
Right.
get rid of like those rookie years. You see rookies now make a lot of mistakes. They don't have the intellect right now. They're still making young decisions because they're around a bunch of young guys in the locker room with them. I came into a system where everybody was already a pro. I came into the system where guys were already, double digit in the league already, and you had a great coach like Denny Green, Willie Shaw, Emmett Thomas. He was my defense coordinator. He's a
Emmett
Hall of Famer.
Thomas. Woo.
You know what I
Whoa.
mean? Yeah, he was my first defensive coordinator. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
you come into a team that's already ready made and built. You know what I mean? You have no choice but kind of to fall in line with their culture.
4 great years with the Vikings, and then you get the call, you're traded to the New York Giants. What was that call like, and what was your first impression with that squad, which was loaded as well?
Yeah, the thing about it, man, with the Vikings, man, I really wanted to stay there, and they wanted to sign me back. I came home, here back to Pensacola after the season's over with. I was a free agent, and my agent was like, "Listen, hey, Minnesota want to sign you back. Let's really see what the market is for you." And I think at the time, Houston, Atlanta, and New York were kind of like the teams that's most interested in me. You know what I mean? And I was trying to get back to Atlanta. It's close to the home. I want to have a chance, my family and friends, to get come see some of the games.
Right.
But my agent was like, "Listen, hey, New York wants you." You know what I mean? He said, "Let's hop on this plane. Let's come to New York." So I hop on the plane, get to New York. My agent picked me up. He said, "Listen, the deal is already done. Here's the numbers. All you got to do is pass the physical." You know what I mean? So I went straight to the facility, did my physical, passed it, and they showed me, that was Coughlin's first year coming in. They just got rid of Jim Fossil. And so they were kind of showing me the layout, like the defensive line. And they ended up bringing in Norman Hand. Norman Hand played with the Saints at the time. So they brought in Norman Hand to be a nose tackle, and I was going to be the 3 technique and next to Strahan. And then we had Keith Washington, and OC was the backup defensive end at the time. But that was the year we drafted Eli Manning. So my first year, Coughlin's first year, was the year we drafted Eli Manning.
Wow.
And then the next year is when we end up drafting Justin Tuck. You know what I mean? So and Matthias Kiwanuka. So they were first round, third round type of guys. And so we had the foundation of our defensive line already set. We had, when I was with the Vikings, we used to dress like 6 defensive linemen a game, 6, maybe 7, right? But
Right.
when I was with the Giants, man, we used to dress like 8, because our D line was so depth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And our second team guys could have started for most teams, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I had great years there, man, and ended up, we just loaded up, man, and got the foundation set for us, and ended up winning the Super Bowl. And I think that was 2007. But the next year, I think that's when we really had the better team. We were 12-4, right? We was like top 3 in defense. We had the number 1 ranked offense. We had 2,000-yard rushes with Brandon Jacobs and Derek Ward. And then Ahmad Bradshaw was our third running back, and he rushed close nearly to 600, 700 yards. So we had 2,000-yard backs, and our third string running back was running for about 600 yards. We had number 1 offense. So, but injuries plagued us. We were the number 1 seed. Injuries plagued us, man, and I think that's kind of like what got us. We ended up losing to Philly, like in NFC divisional round.
Yeah, Coughlin, Syracuse, was coaching at Syracuse when I was in high school coming out. He's a defensive-minded guy. Your defense in there, the Giants, and I think great defenses start with great defensive linemen. All right,
Right.
And D linemen and DBs actually work together. Pressure equals interceptions, and coverage equals sacks. So
Right.
I think it starts with that. Bradley, you mentioned this, that the Super Bowl year, you guys beat the likes of the Bucks, the Packers, and the Cowboys, and all on the road, and then held New England, who was undefeated, to 10 points.
Right.
Holy
Yeah.
macaroni! Talk about that ride.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what's crazy about that year. So that year, was Spagnola's first year. We had just brought Spags from the Eagles. And the first game of the season, we played the Cowboys. The Cowboys put up like over 45 points on us, right? And then the
I got
second
it right in
game,
front of me. I'm looking at
yeah,
it right now.
yeah. And the second game of the season, we played Green Bay, and Green Bay put up like over 40 on us. You know what I mean? And I remember, the third coming into the third week, and then we had to play the Redskins. Like, listen, we don't beat the Redskins, the season done. You know what I mean? And so we played the Redskins, and we had to come from behind to beat them and stop them on the goal line. I think we beat them by 1 point, if I'm not mistaken, 1 or 2 points. We had a
Ooh,
goal line stand to win the game.
whoa,
And
24-17. He beat him.
yeah,
whoa! Yeah, you
24-7.
started
Yeah.
out 0-3. You ain't going to the
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
it would have been over. And I think
Yeah.
we went like on a 6 or 7 game win streak from that point, because what we did, we just simplified the defense, right? We simplified we were doing too much. Listen, let's hang our hat on this, make a few adjustments, but we got to start beating people up front. And I think we made a transition where we dressed 8 defensive linemen. We were rotating guys in. We had a great secondary with Corey Webster, Aaron Ross, R.W. McQuarters, Sam Madison. So we had the
Damn
depth.
right.
We had the depth. Antonio Pierce is our linebacker. Kavika Mitchell. So we had the depth at every position. We just need to play smarter and mistake free. And we went like on a 6, 7 game win streak, man. And then, going into the playoff, we played New England last game of the season. They beat us by 3, and that was a close game. And I remember, a lot of guys were like, "Listen, hey, let's rest the starters." We had already made the playoffs, and we're like, "No, we want to play New England. We want to play the last game of the season." And I think that even though we lost by 3, that game showed us we can play with anybody. And so we had to go on the road. We beat the number 3 seed, Tampa Bay. They were ranked 3. And then we had to go to Dallas. They were the number 1 seed. We ended up getting revenge on them. And then we had to go to cold Green Bay and we got revenge on them. And at that point, man, we was just like us against the world. That was our mentality. You know what I mean? And so, and then going to the Super Bowl, man, it was like straight business. We didn't have fun. And we had fun, obviously, with our family and friends, but we looked at it as like, listen, hey, I grew up watching the Super Bowl. We're here. You know what I mean? Who knows if we ever get this moment again.
Right.
So we really honed in on our skill set, man, and watched a ton of tape, ton of film, and realized in order to beat the Patriots, one, you got to put pressure on Tom Brady, right? And you got to control the football as an offense, and you got to eliminate mistakes. You got to play mistake-free football, and we did all 3 of those things and ended up coming out victorious.
Man, you had to be
held them at 10 points. Held them at 10 points.
10
Yes.
points.
That was phenomenal.
Right.
You were playing against Hall of Fame quarterbacks right there, and Brett Favre and Troy Aikman there, man.
Right.
And those guys. Talk about that. Your D line coach and teammates that you learned the most from. Was John Randall one of your mentors, or who did you learn the most as a D line teammate, and who was the greatest D line coach you had?
Man, I would say, first off, I learned a lot from John Randall as a rookie. I just soaked up every information. I grew up watching him and wanting to mimic him and do everything. But John told me, said, listen, you can't do what I do, right? Like you can take some of the things I do and apply it to your game, right? But don't try to replicate me. Just take a few things that you want to apply to your game and put your own twist on it. And so he kind of helped me groom me like my rookie year and into the next year. Like, listen, how do I become my own defensive lineman, right? So when you play with a Hall of Fame guy like that telling you things, and John Randall, his work ethic was just phenomenal, and you go from John Randall and then you playing next to Michael Strahan, right? And so now you learning from Strahan, okay, now I know how to rush as a 3 technique, but how do I rush as a 3 technique when I got a Michael Strahan next to me, right? Or when I kick down as a nose tackle on pass rushing downs, and now you got Justin Tuck as a 3 technique, Strahan as an end, and Osi as an end. How do you learn the pass rush of all those guys, right? And so now, not only did I learn I learned what those guys' moves were. So now, if I'm rushing next to Strahan and I'm rushing on the guard, and we get this pass set, I already know how Strahan's going to rush. So I don't have to think and look over at him. So it allowed ourselves to play smarter. And I think playing with guys like Strahan, Osi, and Tuck, you don't only learn what you do, but you learn what everybody else do. And we learn how to play fast, and we learn how to play off. We learn how to play off of each other and give defense and get offensive line multiple looks, because that's when I played. When I was with the Vikings, I was pretty much like a nose and played, a nose tackle, right? But when I went to the Giants, I played 3 technique. I played nose. I played left end. I played right end. We ran a 3-4. We ran a 4-3, and we used to move around a ton. And so the challenge was, I'm not just rushing against one offensive lineman the whole game. I might be rushing against 3 or 4. So it's a lot more studying involved, but it gives you a chance to create that right matchup with guys.
That's interesting. Bradley Bowes says you haven't changed a bit since high school days. Michael Strahan is a good guy. Who is the mean? I mean, who could turn it on and off? The switch comes on, right? And you come off when you come off the field. But who was just a mean son of a gun that no offensive lineman really wanted to take on?
You know what, man? I would say, oh man, that's a hard one. I would say when I was with the Vikings, I played with Kevin Williams. Kevin Williams with the Vikings. He came in as a rookie like my last couple of years there. But Kevin was a big, strong, powerful dude that you don't want to kind of get. He was a young bull, man. He used to get pissed off a lot. You know what I mean? But he ended up being a great, a great D lineman for the Vikings. John Randall learned he know how to play games with you, man. John knew how to beat you mentally and have fun, and I took that from him too as well. I think just having fun, learning guys' bio, repeating it to them during the game, having fun with some of the guys. I think Strahan was hard nosed. I think we had fun when I was with the Giants, and we were a bunch of clowns out there on the field. I think we always competed with each other, though. I think that's what kind of made us great. Yeah. But I would say, like Osi, nobody watched film like Osi Umeyor. I think he was a technician when it came to watching film. You know what I mean? But I played with a lot of guys who everybody had that mean streak in them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You wouldn't be there if you did.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has that mean streak. But I think as a group, as a whole, we just learned how to play off each other. When somebody got mad or got pissed off, we all came together and everybody just got pissed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Stood up for each other. Toughest O-line that you couldn't get off the block. Yeah, I mean,
Larry Allen.
Larry Allen. He had long arms and strong and good feet, right?
Yeah, Larry, was a big dude.
Yeah, Larry was big, strong. He was fast and quick. I don't think he was strong and powerful. I don't think people give him how quick his feet was, how good he was with the hands enough credit. You know what I mean? But it's almost like he was a defensive lineman playing offensive guard. You know what I mean? Yeah. Once he got his hands on you, man, it was hard to get off. He was just a professional, but you just had to kind of work the edge. I mean, guys like that, you can't go down the middle of. You're going to lose every time. But it was one of those things where you have to play consistent versus guys like that, right? They're not going to make mistakes when you play against, guys like Larry Allen. You know what I mean? He's not going to make mistakes. So you had to learn how to play like mistake-free football with him and be more consistent. You're going to be in for a long battle. You might not have a lot of tackles that game or a lot of quarterback pressures, but it's one of those ones where, like, every snap, you got to make sure your helmet is buckled. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep. All right. 3 career interceptions, the same amount as me. That's all right. 3 interceptions, but I got them in 1 year. Talk about their picks. Did you get a tip? I mean, what was the freak interception?
I got 3. They don't count the playoffs, but I ended up intercepting 3. I got like 6 total. I ended up getting like 3.
Three in the playoffs.
Yeah, I got 3 in the playoffs. I got I think 3 or 4 of them came from I think two came from tip passes.
Yeah.
I intercepted Hasselback and McNabb. I tipped both of those passes. And I think the other 3 or 4 I think were screens. I could play the hell out of a screen now. You know what I mean? So They used to call me the Screen Master, man. I used to play the hell out of the screen. But the other 4, the
what do we call that in basketball?
Just dating them.
Snowbirding.
Yeah, the other 4 came off screens. I picked off 4 screens, and I think 2 were tips.
Did you take one back? Did you ever take one back?
Man, no, man. Hey, I realized how far 100 yards was, man.
You only had to go 20, 30 yards sometimes. Oh my gosh.
Now I picked up a fumble one time when I was with the Redskins, and it was funny because we had a 16-play drive. It was a 16-play drive. The Redskins kicked the field goal. All right, then they kicked off to us to kick off. Offense ran 1 play. a deep pass. Redskins intercepted it, and then we had like a 14 play drive, right? And on the 14 play, uh, Betts, I think Betts was running back with a Redskins at the time. He fumbled, and I picked it up, and I didn't want to pick it up. He fumbled it, and I ran like 67 yards. But by the time I got to like 50, 60 yards, that piano jumped on my back, man. You know what I mean? And
That's
that
all
was
right.
it.
That's all right.
60-yard return. That's all right. You outran him for 50 yards.
Yeah.
Eli Manning. What was Eli like?
Man, Eli was a great man. He came into the first year there. We had Kurt Warner. My first year with the Giants, we had Kurt Warner. We had signed, and so Eli had a chance to learn, from Kurt Warner. Like the first, and I think Kurt played like the first 5 or 6 games, and then they handed it off to Eli. You know what I mean? But Eli was a pro's pro. He came and we surrounded him with great talent. We had Amani Toomer, Ike Hilliard at the time, Jeremy Shockey, we had Tiki, Ron Dane, you know what I mean? And then the following year, that's when we got, Brandon Jacobs and Mike Cloud. I don't know if y'all remember Mike Cloud was running back for us. And then we got, Derek Ward and Amar Bradshaw and, get some great receiving cores. But Eli was, by that time, he was able to groom those guys, But Eli was a funny guy. He was a jokester, prankster of the locker room. He used to put dye in guys' shoes and gloves and turn your hands and feet purple. You know what I mean? But by the time Eli third year, he was in his own character. He was able to take control of the team.
Right.
You know what I mean? His first couple of years there, he came with offense. We had a bunch of alpha males already on the offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But after like year 2 or 3, he was able to really take charge of the offense, take charge of the huddle.
Oh man, Monday night podcast, the Manning podcast. Man, I just love that show. I watch that now because I learned so much, and I don't understand why other players and coaches don't watch that because their insight, even though they're funnier than hell, and I enjoy watching them, you could pick up so many things from what they're talking about.
Right, and that's the thing. I learned a lot just competing with them during practice. You know what I mean? Because Coughlin always loved to have like the ones versus ones. You know what I mean? Not just the ones versus the threes or the practice squad to get a good look. He wanted everybody. Look, we're gonna get a great look, and the best way we can get a great look is we go ones versus ones. You know what I mean? So.
Yes.
Our offense used to simulate other teams' offenses and vice versa, and we assimilate other teams' defenses. So I think that's kind of like what made us better at the time because not only are you getting a great look, you're getting a great look from actual guys, who play, not just the practice squad guys. So we used to do that kind of all the time, and going against him as offense, that helped us as a defense, right? Learning checks, learning what the anticipation of what some quarterbacks should do. And I think that was one of the main things we did that Super Bowl year that kind of got us over the hump is we always used to watch film, like as individuals and some as a team. But that year we used to watch it a lot as a team and we used to watch it with the offense too as well. So the offense always, hey Fred, when you see the offensive lineman doing this is what he's thinking because this is what I would do, and I would do the same thing for our offensive line. So we used to give each other like tips and looks based on what we do and anticipate what other teams would do.
That's a great idea, man. Go to your offense and see what they think the DBs are doing.
Right.
I didn't do that enough as a coach. I really did, but that's going next level stuff.
Right. And I'm gonna tell you, and one other thing we did that at first we were like, man, what the hell is Coughlin thinking about? But on Fridays, we would watch like an hour of tape on the referees. Right.
What?
So we will watch like every flag, like, okay, so if you were back judge and we the DBs watch every flag that this guy's throw because every referee has one pet peeve or something that they harp on. How many defensive holding has he called? How many pass interference does this guy call? How many offensive line holding? So when I went against the offensive lineman, and I knew I was playing against the back judge who always threw a lot of flags off his line. I'm out there doing this and pointing at him, you know what I mean, trying to get some. So the first couple
Twisted.
times we
He's holding
the
it
first couple
twist.
times we did it, we were like, man, why the hell are we watching this? But as we got going, we was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So I knew going into a game, if offensive line was trying to, reach block me, I knew how long I could put my hands on before this guy behind me or throw a flag. So it kind of helped me out, like kind of get away with a few things.
Wow, that's brilliant. I've never heard that before.
Right.
Oh man, that's awesome. Coughlin was a banger. I know he came from the old school. I know he's with O'Leary at Syracuse, so he knows how to bang. I know with CTE and I believe ALS as well, they don't hit as much, and of course you don't hit in the NFL like you do in college. But
Right.
I always like Coughlin did, and Lombardi and Coach Bryant, and my two coaches, O'Leary. They believed in one-on-one banging hard and making practices harder than the games, because then what's your theory on that, and how have we gotten away from that?
I think the game has kind of like changed and evolved a little bit. They taking kind of like the old school. You don't see a lot of old school coaches no more. It's all like a young guys game. Everybody want to see points. Everybody want to see, back in the 80s, man, 70s, 80s, even early 90s, man, it was all about, defense, man. You pretty much can name every starter, linebacker, and hard hitting safety, on every defense.
Right.
I was telling some guys just a couple weeks ago, I was like, listen, right now you guys could probably name me the starting linebacker, safety from every team back in the 80s, right? But could you do that now?
Right.
You can't do it now because of the physicality of the game. Now you probably could do a lot of defensive linemen, defensive ends, or maybe even cornerbacks or receivers, right? But like linebackers, you can't really name like the hard hitting linebackers anymore. You know what I mean? Or the safeties, or even running backs. I challenge guys. I said, name me all the running backs of every NFL team right now. But you can name me every running back from teams in the 80s or early 90s. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how the game has transitioned. Like back in the 80s, you probably couldn't name every receiver, but I bet you can name me every receiver on the team now.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, that's kind of like how the game has kind of like transitioned. I understand like, the CTE and the concussion and the banging. But I tell you this, Paul, I played 12 years because I learned how not to get hit. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
I use my hands a lot, and so usually when you big and strong, and you like me 6'5", 300 pounds, you taught your whole career. Just come off the ball and just blow and knock people back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But one of the things I learned from John Ramley, he's like, listen, that is going to get you tired quick, right? And you got to play a whole game. You can't play 80 plays a game like that. You got to start using your hands more. And so now instead of me hitting guys with my face and chest come off the ball, now I learn to take some of that, head injury, right? And I just replace it with my hands. So now I was striking guys, with my hands, first. Now my hands and arms became a lot more sore and beat up, you know what I mean? But towards the end of my career, man, I learned how to play smarter, right? And by that time, it's like driving in traffic, man. Once you learn how the traffic is going to be a certain time of the day, you know how to get around it. You know what I mean? And football is like the same way. So like once I see a different look, they're in a two-back set, far out, near eye, I can kind of break the game down and kind of anticipate, am I going to get a double team, a slip block, scoop block? So I kind of anticipated what I was going to. I was able to play smarter as I got older. When I was young, I used to bang all the time. But as you get older, you just learn how to play smarter.
Right. Absolutely. D-line. Now the current D linemen are putting together these like position camps where they can give trade secrets away. What's your thought on those guys doing that?
I think it's a way for guys to get better. You know what I mean? I think, before things used to be secretive, you know what I mean? But now you have a bunch of defense linemen just coming together, man. Look, this show, guys how to get better, how to elevate the game. Because, it's all about success. Everybody want to be successful, especially, you're taking an individual game out, individual, stats out and just for yourself. And now, when you're young, you want the stats, right? You want to be able to say you one of the greatest. But as you get older, at some point, you got to have that championship mindset. I'm in it not just to I want to win a ring. You know what I mean? I want to be able to bring the trophy home. You know what I mean? But if you don't have guys willing enough beside you to put in the same max effort that you are, then then what are we doing? You know what I mean? So now I look at it more as like guys are challenging each other, challenging their teammates to get better. And I remember like my last 2 years with the Rams, I was telling guys, I listen, hey, I'm a veteran. I won a Super Bowl. Look, I'm not out here, man, to try to rebuild a team. You know what I mean? Like, I want to help you guys get better, but here I have a lot more years behind me than I do in front of me. Like, you
Right.
guys got to get on the same page now with me if you want to be able to elevate and be able to last in this league a little bit longer. So I think it's all depends on too, like where you at in your career. Like when you're
Right.
young, a lot of young guys really don't understand it. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
as you get older, you realize, okay, these young guys getting bigger, stronger, and faster each and every year. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and you really can't compete with those guys on a skill set, but you can compete with them smarter. You know what I mean? So I think when you look
Yep.
at that, those guys putting together those type of camps, guys are learning, hey man, I lost a step or two, right? But how can I still play fast? I just need
Right.
the extra trade secrets. You know what I mean?
Yep. Bradley, you
Right.
have any questions? Coach Hobbs, do you have any questions for Fred?
I don't have any questions. Just I love Fred. He's one of the best dudes in the world, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Oh man, thank you, Brad. It's always a pleasure seeing you, man. Talking with you too, buddy.
Fred, only thing is, you mentioned Michael Strahan there. One day I was riding with Lee down in South Florida. We're talking about Lee Williams from the Chargers, and
Hmm.
Michael Strahan called him for Lee to work him out. And speaking on that last little part there, I think you guys, I'm sure you went to mentors that helped that, help with that right there. But Michael Strahan was one of the guys when he came into the league, he asked for help.
Looking for help. Yeah.
Looking for
You,
help.
you
Right.
have such a big ego, you think you know everything. And that's a lot of problem with a lot of the coaches, too.
And that is, man. I think I was always taught by Coach Jim Caldwell, man. Listen, you always got room to grow. I don't care how good you get, how great you get.
Right.
It's always still room for improvement. And also, you don't realize, like the same way I watch tape, guys are watching tape on me. Like, listen, how can I defeat Fred? How can I defeat his
Right.
first step? You know what I mean? So you have to be a pro's pro. You can't get the big head to think that you got it all. You know what
Right.
I mean? And because everybody needs help, you know what I mean? And I think
Yep.
that's where, guys have been doing it. It's just a little bit more secretive now. You know what I mean? Back then,
Mm-hmm.
but I think
Mm-hmm.
now it's kind of like out the bag because that's how the game is transitioned. That's where we at right now. You know what I
Helping each
mean?
other.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, helping each other. They do the O-line camps. You see
Yeah.
Kittle and everybody doing the tight end camps. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
You see the Manning brothers doing the passing academies, getting
Yep.
these guys together. So listen, it all helps. You're gonna see a lot more great football instead of
Yeah.
seeing one or two guys every week. Now you're gonna be able to turn on the TV and watch any game and see some excitement. I think that's the benefit of it.
Okay. Last two questions. Number one, talk about your wife, Tia, in Mr. Robbins' neighborhood.
Yeah, man. So we're doing some great things, man. My wife Tia, she's kind of, when she came back, she said, "Listen, how are we going to give back to the community?" You know what I mean? We started doing it. I was playing with the Giants. I used to bring, elementary, middle, and high school kids to our practice on Saturday. Let them show the different career paths, things you can do outside of sports. The people that I needed in my life every day for me to have a 12-year career. I want to show kids, like, listen, hey. I'm going to help, the 1% of kids that do make it. Hey, you blessed, right? But
Right.
how do I help the other 98.5, the other 99% of kids who don't make it?
Yes.
So that's kind of like where my thought process was in showing them like other career paths. If you love sports, here's some careers that people that I needed that can make good money for a long time, right?
Right.
And so, but every year it's always challenging. Now, you had the rise of social media, in the late 2010s or whatever, and now you got the NIL and the transfer portal. So every year it's always something with sports that's trying to to change the mindset of it. And so my
Yeah.
job is look, just help keep these kids up to date. And I think one of the main things we did a parents program. So we bring the parents in and say, listen, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how you can help police us with your kids. And here's some things that you need to be aware of as a parent. You know what I
Right.
mean? Some of the trends that's going on, because I think a lot of times a lot of kids get caught up in the trap because their parents just allow. They think, everybody has the best interest in a child. But now the problem is like, how do we adjust the business side of sports that's in youth, that's in high school, that's in college? Now that has become a business. But it's professional guys in the professional ranks that can't even handle all that pressure. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now
Right.
and now you're putting that pressure on teenagers and youth kids who have no idea. You know what I mean? So
Right.
as our nonprofit, that's kind of some of the things we work on, man, to make these kids aware of it and the parents aware of all the good and the bad of everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking to the parents as well, because the kids, they mold like a piece of clay. You got to get to the parents. All right, last question: who would be a great guest to have on the show?
Oh man,
Eli Strahan.
I think, yeah, I think Eli, man. Strahan, big money. It's hard to get straight
Yeah,
on,
he's hard
man.
to get a
Straight
hold
all
of.
over the place,
Yeah.
man.
Eli's still down to earth a little bit. Maybe
Yeah,
we can lasso Eli. I think Michael's
yeah.
a little
I think Eli, man. Eli just, I mean, Strahan has a great personality, man. I think he has one of the best personalities of anybody I ever met. But I just think, Eli, man, with who else would be great? Chris Long.
Oh yeah,
Chris
he would be
Long.
great. He would be
Chris
great.
Long, yeah, him and I were talking last night, man. Because matter of fact, he was at that SAC summit with the D-line guys.
Oh, was
They
he?
had this, yeah, with Von Miller SAC
Right.
summit. So him and I were talking yesterday, man. Good friend of mine, but he's someone who has a lot of stories, man. Just I learned a lot playing with him my last 2 years with the Rams, from stories that he learned growing up from his dad, Howie Long,
Yep.
from the Raiders
Yep.
back in the day,
Yep.
man. So
Yep. Back
I
in the
think I,
day.
I I think he'll be a great guest, man, for him on. And
All
plus,
right.
he
Well,
has his
that's
own.
soon.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll throw something in there. We'll throw a bone out there to him. Thanks,
yeah,
Fred.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
thank
Appreciate
you, man.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Appreciate it,
Brad, for
man.
coming on.
man.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Thanks
buddy.
for
Love y'all,
being
man.
here.
Take care.
See you, Brad. Thank you, buddy.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
long. Wow, he was good, man. Isn't he great?
Ooh,
Man, that was
incredible.
awesome. That was awesome. Thanks for
Incredible.
watching Coach's Corner on behalf of Coach Mark Hobley and me, Coach
Sure.
Tripp. Have a great sports week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Stay tuned for these messages. Without these great sponsors, this just wouldn't be possible. So long.
Arbitrium Consulting for all your fencing, landscaping, pressure washing, tree trimming needs. Call 850-483-0350 for your free estimates. Serving Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin, Perdido, Gulf Shores, Foley, and the entire Gulf Coast. Arbitrium Consulting is owner-operated, fully licensed and insured. Call today, 850-483-0350, the official landscaper of Coach's Corner.
Hey, Bama fans, this is Will Moore, president of the Pensacola Bama Club. You can find us at PensacolaBamaClub.com. We are your official alumni chapter in the Pensacola and surrounding areas. Membership is available to all alumni and all Bama fans, so come see us at one of our many events throughout the year. Our Bama football watch parties are the next best thing to being in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We even serve authentic stadium hot dogs. Membership, event, and contact information will be found on our website at PensacolaBamaClub.com. Roll Tide.
For over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352, 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.
Did you know there's a place where you can get good neighbor service and surprisingly great rates on your home and auto insurance? Yep, and that place is, ta-da, State Farm. Here's the deal. State Farm agent Will Rentschler is your go-to agent in Pensacola, Florida for the service you deserve at the price that you want. So stop shopping around. State Farm agent Will Rentschler has you covered. Call 850-433-4678 for your surprisingly great rates today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Legal disclaimer, individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to State Farm underwriting requirements.